Glad to have you with us on this Thursday. Glad it's Thursday, which means it's almost Friday and a day closer to the weekend. Beautiful, beautiful weather outside, and the forecast has even improved. How can you improve on yesterday's? Well, indeed we have. The slim chances for rain towards the end of the forecast period pretty much gone at this point, and temperatures have increased. Be glad to share that with you in more detail in just a few moments. Headlines tonight include coverage of the Johnson County Fiscal Court meeting from earlier in the week, also the regular session of the Montgomery County Public Library Board, and other headlines to follow in what's left of the half hour. There is some significant news, and it broke around 3 o'clock this morning or shortly before, that a plan had been formed and an agreement had been reached. Senator and Senate President Robert Stivers and House Speaker Greg Stumbo jointly announced just before 3 in the a.m. that they had reached an agreement on the 2-year, $21 billion spending plan for the state of Kentucky. And here are the high and low lights, if you will, at this time that we can pass along to you. There will be cuts to most all state agencies to the tune of 9% over the next 2 years. Funds have been left in place for a 2-year degree scholarship program for students in Kentucky. There's going to be a 4.5% cut to universities over the next 2 years. Kentucky State University will actually be left out of that and exempt, Stumbo says, as a way for them to be able to carry on forward. The budget will provide more than $1 billion in funding to the pension programs across the Commonwealth, which is $30 billion in debt. And that is the most that has ever been put into the pension at one time, funded at one time from what we understand. The salaries of our Kentucky State Police troopers will get an increase. No cuts were made to public funding or Planned Parenthood. And one that we were closely watching was coal severance funds. The House, as of late, had pushed to try to get 100% of the coal severance tax funds coming back to coal-producing counties. Well, that did not happen. There was a compromise reached, and the good news is that it is an increase. Of course, not much coal severance taxes out there for Kentucky coal-producing counties, certainly in eastern Kentucky. However, it has gone from the 50% as it has always stood, or at least stood for many, many years, to 60%, which is an increase in coal severance funds. As for it being a finality, the full legislature, will vote on the budget on tomorrow. I'll pick up meeting coverage with the Johnson County Fiscal Court right after this. For high-speed internet starting at 15 meg for all of your gaming, movie, home, and business solutions, or to watch TV, including your favorite local channels without a contract, with hundreds of channels and digital and HD quality, and to stay connected 24/7 with friends and family, a direct line to 911, or to give your business the link it needs, choose telephone service you know is always there. Just click on their link on this site to find out how affordable the latest technology in communications can be. Foothills Communications. We'll turn to coverage from the Montgomery County Public Library Board meeting earlier this week in just a moment. Right now, we'll pick it up with finances discussed early on in this week's regular session of the Johnson County Fiscal Court. In early business, the Johnson County Fiscal Court voted to transfer $40,000 from the general fund to the jail fund. There was an appointment made to the Big Sandy Regional Industrial Development Board, which oversees activities of the industrial park, which is located near the prison. Judge Tucker Daniel announced the retirement of Denny Dorton, who had long served in that position, and nominated Kathy Walker, who was approved by the Fiscal Court and Commissioners. There was also approval requested to advertise for bids for Mack trucks to serve the county, a lease program through Worldwide Equipment that they have taken advantage of for the past several years, with a program the judge says is hard not to believe as too good to be true. In essence, he says the fiscal court would sign an agreement with Worldwide, as they have done for several years, to lease new trucks for a year at significant and major discounts, and then agree to sell at the same time those same trucks to an auction company 1 year later, often making a profit for the county.
And they guarantee that we can buy those trucks, use those trucks for a year, give them back to them as long as they're not been wrecked or torn up or whatever, but with normal wear and tear, and guarantee us savings, a tremendous savings toward paying off the vehicles. And every single year at the end of the term of the lease purchase, We have delivered those vehicles. We've used them for a year. And they're in excess of a $100,000 vehicle. And we use them for a year, and we've been able to sell them, or Wood Auction has been able to sell those trucks at a profit to us. So if you think that sounds too good to be true, that's true. That is one of those deals. And I did not enter into this agreement the first year they had it. For that very reason, I thought there ain't no way. There's no way that they can let us have a brand new Mack truck and drive those things for a year, use them exactly the way we use our own vehicles, bring them back to them and let them take them down and sell them at auction and not have to pay a bunch of money. I think we made $40,000 clear on the trucks the first year. We cleared money up until what, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
And we lost, well, when you didn't lose, my God, it was,
Cost us
what, 6,000?
6 or 8,000.
Huh?
6 or 8,000.
Yeah, I believe $6,000 is what we had to end up paying for those brand new vehicles because of a downturn. As you know, the economy's been in the tank for a long time.
And after discussion, the fiscal court voted to purchase 2 new trucks in that manner. They also proceeded to open bids, actually one bid for the Cross Creek Bridge, which was damaged in part, or in most part, by July flooding along Route 172. FEMA said that they were not able to pay for the bridge replacement and or repair because all the damages didn't happen at the same time or in relation to the particular incident that they were involved with. However, the county was able to file applications for monies with the state, and they did receive those funds or promise thereof. The single bid was submitted by Bush and Burchett at $97,500. It was accepted contingent on verification. The court entered into a lease agreement with Mountain Comprehensive Care Center's new Safe Haven program, which provides services for domestic violence victims and also specifically, I believe, children affected by domestic violence. Safe Haven will be located in a city-owned structure near the courthouse. Emergency Management Director Gary McClure then outlined the status on 2 Homeland Security projects for the Flat Gap and Red Bush Fire Departments, grants totaling $10,500 for each department for purchase of personal protective equipment, with McClure stating that $10,500 would purchase just about 3 sets of turnout gear for the fire department. And lastly, Judge Tucker Daniel gave an update on what he still refers to as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the community of Van Lear and the county as a whole for the sewer project, which is still on the table. A town hall meeting was held just last week inviting landowners to come and give their input, specifically those who would have land involved in the right-of-way. He says that the grant funds are still in place for this solely because the sewer system will run directly to the landfill that the county operates where waste is taken. And they have to have easement landowners' signatures on all of the applications by the end of June for the project to continue.
Because we had a question, well, what if a property owner lives on this line, it's going to go through his property, and on the other side of his house maybe, or the side or wherever, he's got some rental property. He may have 3 or 4 or even 5 tenants. And they said, well, what about a tap for those tenants that live along the rental property lives along I'm the property owner. Can I get a tap for them? And they've agreed, yes, that they would do that. So that's really been a very important issue for the city to step up and do that, and it's really made a difference. And hopefully, by working together on this thing, we'll get finished with it pretty soon. I just am so hopeful that it's going to have a chance to come to fruition.
More news in just a minute. They discussed an appraisal for the current McGoffin County Public Library building and also fielded questions about the demolition of the Sagersville First Baptist Church building to make way for a new McGoffin County Public Library in this week's regular session meeting. During Tuesday's regular session, the library board discussed having an appraisal done on the current library building. They also discussed having repairs made to the bathroom facilities before that appraisal was done in the coming days. They also voted to change their meeting time from 3 o'clock on the second Tuesday of the month to 4 o'clock on the same day. They also voted to cancel the insurance policy, which was being held on the old Sagersville First Baptist Church. Their attorney also advised them that they wouldn't have to have a liability policy on just the bare property because it would fall under the county's liability umbrella, but that once construction began, they wouldn't need construction insurance. Chairman Brent Patrick cited high unemployment and high tax rates for the county and said the board was looking at cutting the budget for the new library to be constructed by 25% and cutting the square footage of the structure by about a third. He said they also had a goal of cutting the library tax rate 2.4% to make it a flat tax of 8% in the coming cycle of adjustments in the next year to 2 years.
We're looking at cutting the budget, or we're looking at cutting the size of the building down by 1/3. And we're looking at cutting the budget at least 25%, maybe more, if at all possible. And having do that, I think that's going to let us build what we can afford, which is going to be a really nice library for that size. And that will allow us to adjust our tax rates. And when we adjust them, we're going to be able to lower them.
In taking business from the floor, they were addressed by David Patrick, who is off camera, with my apologies. To be perfectly honest, our videographer left this camera running to go set up for another meeting. Patrick questioned several items, including why a chain link protective fence was installed around the demolition after the demolition had begun and not before, as was a part of the contract agreement. The board's attorney referred that question to Codell Construction, saying that they would be the one to answer. Patrick also questioned who gave the authority to tear down the church after the last motion made in a meeting was to wait for a financial report from Codell Construction before proceeding. The attorney then again answered, saying that after the court's dismissal of the injunction in place on tearing the building down, that allowed the library board to refer back to an earlier vote to tear down the church. And he last asked why no items inside were saved, the columns outside, as well as the woodwork and other items of significant value, and instead being left inside and destroyed with the demolition, to which the attorney answered that he didn't know.
Another thing I wanted to say is, why wasn't there, if you're interested in saving money, why wasn't the trim taken out of that building and sold? Why wasn't the columns sold? Why wasn't the 3 air conditioners that was out back, why weren't they sold to the general public? Or as Mr. Patrick's so concerned about the poor in this county, why weren't these pieces of equipment given to the public?
Well, the board can't give things
What do you
away.
mean, what happened to the 3 air conditioners?
I have no idea.
And one last reminder, the meeting time has been adjusted to the second Tuesday, still staying on the same day of the month, but the time moved up to 4 o'clock. More news in just a second. I had an interesting call earlier this afternoon in recognition of what will be 50 years this year, the 50th anniversary of the Dayton Group coming to Appalachia and Eastern Kentucky and McGoffin County for much of that. They're putting together a special presentation, and they need the public's help. And I'll have an interview with someone with them tomorrow to tell you more and about how you can be a part of that special recognition. 50 years. And indeed, they've got a lot of stories to tell and a lot of service that they have done to this community. We'll also be talking about some recent court filings and happenings in regard to the court case against several individuals in McGoffin County as for election and voter fraud and conspiracy. The few court documents I'll be able to share with you on tomorrow's program and some other breaking news before we leave you for the weekend. With that said, we still got some local news and announcements, and one report from around the region where a man accused of murder is now back in Eastern Kentucky. Specifically, he's in the Big Sandy Regional Detention Center and now officially facing charges of murder here in Eastern Kentucky. Police believe that this man, 47-year-old Stanley Webb Jr. of Logan, Ohio, was in Eastern Kentucky, specifically in Lawrence County, on the day of April the 5th. It was just before that he is alleged to have taken the lives of relatives, 79-year-old Lois Garton of Lawrence County, as well as her stepson, 52-year-old Michael Garton. They were both found shot to death in her home on that 5th day of April on Knob Branch in Blaine. Ohio police caught up with Webb after an alert was sent out in his name and identity, and he was found after giving police a brief chase in a 2003 Jeep Liberty that belonged to Lois Garton that was taken from her home on the day of her murder. Now, in addition to facing charges of theft of unlawful taking of the automobile, as well as possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, he has officially been charged with murder for the 2 victims. And as of 9:09 last night, he was booked in the Big Sandy Regional Detention Center after being extradited from Franklin County, Ohio. Here's what's happening on tonight's McGoffin Farm Bureau Community Calendar. Revival coming up at the Burning Fork Community Church on Monday, starting Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 7 of next week with speaker Charles Glover. That's Revival at the Burning Fork Community Church, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week at 7 o'clock. And this is your invitation. And you're also invited to join them for Revival at the Bradley Free Will Baptist Church, starting this Sunday night at 6 and then nightly thereafter at 7. That will be with James Kelly Cottle. This invitation comes to you from Pastor Randy Haney and everyone at Bradley Free Will Baptist here in McGoffin County on Burning Fork. A couple of other announcements and reminders. Don't forget that they're doing it every Monday at 5:30. They're having the youth and family bike and walk. They'll meet at the Jane Bashir Trailhead there in the Dawkins Trail. That's right near the Meadows. They're giving away prizes every Monday. Every time you go, you also get registered to win a couple of bicycles to be given away at the end of the next 2 months. Some really nice bicycles. A really great evening. 5:30 on Mondays through May the 23rd. And don't forget about the workshop, and I'll remind you next week, it's Thursday and Friday at your McGoffin County Extension Service. At noon on both days, they'll talk about building and actually show you hands-on how to build your own raised bed garden. That's Thursday. And then Friday, they'll tell you how to get the most out of your small garden. And I'll tell everyone about your birthday, anniversary, or calendar announcement if you'll just tell me. And this is how you do it. A reminder of funeral services to be held tomorrow morning beginning at 11 in honor of 83-year-old Merlene Gullett Isaac of Mudlick Road, who passed away on the 11th, survived by her husband Wade, as well as sons Marcus Castle, Billy Joe, Wade Jr., Keen Matthew, and Adam Isaac, and daughters Judy Williams and Sheila Prater. Services once again tomorrow at 11 o'clock, following visitation for the rest of this evening. 69-year-old Sam Conley of Old Lick Creek Road passed away Monday, the son of the late Raymond and Ruby Adams. He's survived by his wife, Gail Morgan Conley, and son Ryan Conley, and daughters Heavenly Joy Fairchild and Samantha Perkins. Visitation continues this evening and up until services. That will begin at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon from the Sagersville Funeral Home. I'm not sure if I mentioned services for Merlene Gullett Isaac are at the McGoffin County Funeral Home tomorrow morning. 77-year-old Alkie Swihart of Horsepen in McGoffin County passed away Sunday, preceded in death by her husband Richard. She is survived by sons Richard, Mark, Christopher Allen, Daniel, Lee, and Patrick Swihart, and daughter Sheila Kay. Visitation is the rest of this evening and prior to tomorrow's services. They'll begin tomorrow morning at 11 from the Sagersville Funeral Home. And from my understanding, service is still incomplete at this hour for young 17-year-old Seth Alexander Barnett of Houston, Texas, but formerly of McGoffin County. Services are to be held at the McGoffin County Funeral Home. We'll pass those along to you just as soon as we have them. And we'll wrap it up this Thursday. I cannot believe it is Thursday already. But indeed it is, and it's been a beautiful one. I still have, shortly after 6 o'clock, 80 degrees here at the studio out front in the sunshine. And I'm not complaining. 45 for nighttime lows tonight under mostly clear skies. And, you know, when these forecasts are made up of a few words, it's most often a good thing. We haven't had one like this in a long time. So we can sum it up by saying sunny and clear tomorrow and Saturday, 70s both days, low 70s and low to mid 40s for nighttime lows. And tell me that's not the best Licking Valley forecast you've seen in a long, long time. Upper 70s on Sunday, sunny and clear. Upper 70s Monday, sunny, partly cloudy. Don't let that stress you. Yesterday I had a 20% chance of showers there instead of partly cloudy. Don't have that. Just the partly cloudy. Low 70s on your next Tuesday. Still partly sunny, partly cloudy. Wednesday of next week, looking a little bit farther than that, we do have some cold front that will take us from 78 Monday to 72 Tuesday. And the upper 60s Wednesday, I think it will be short-lived and very little showers or thunderstorms associated with it. Good news all around, forecast-wise. Going to do it for your Thursday. Enjoy the rest of it. It's going to be a beautiful evening. Good news is, if you can't for some reason, we've got much more in store. But be sure and join us back here tomorrow night for more news that you'll only find if you're here with us on Your News Today. Good night, and thanks for watching.